Hey guys, in the year 800 A, the earth trembled as thousands of people gathered around a newly built mound. They were there to bury their chief. He was old and sick, and they wanted to honor him one last time before letting him go to the afterlife. In the modern day, we know that the mound was part of the great city of Cahokia. It was the largest pre-Columbian city in what is today the United States, boasting nearly 10,000 residents at its peak. But even though it was so large, we don't know much about it because the people who lived there didn't leave behind any written history. All we have are mounds and artifacts. And one of those artifacts has been hiding something very big. This huge burial mound where the chief was laid to rest was over 100 feet high. It was constructed with painstaking care, brick by brick, each one handcrafted from the rich black soil of the Mississippi River Valley. The body of the chief was wrapped in burial garments and placed at the very top. Everything was set in order, and the earth was filled back into the pit. Then the Moors came to pay their respects. They walked around the mound and sang songs for many days until the spirit of their leader was appeased. Fast forward 1,200 years to 1969, when archaeologists found the mound covered in weeds and vines. At this point, most of it had eroded away, and all that remained was a small knob in the ground. They dug inside and found a collection of copper earrings, stone tools, and animal bones. Nothing too crazy. Then, just as they were about to give up, they saw something strange. Buried under the chief's original skeleton were two more bodies. This suggests that the mound may have originally been much larger, and that these two people were sacrificed and buried underneath the chief when he died. But that wasn't all. As they continued digging deeper, they uncovered the remnants of a wooden box. The wood was rotted, but researchers could make out a shape inside. So they carefully brushed away the dirt to find a human face staring back at them. It was a clay sculpture with a wide open mouth and hands covering his ears. His eyes were bulging, and he was clearly in the middle of the screen. Then, just as quickly as they had found the statue, it began to fall apart. Researchers didn't have enough time to document every piece, but they managed to glue some of it back together and send it to a lab for restoration. Experts believe the man may have been a deity of some sort, or maybe an intercessor between the living and the dead. As the archaeologists were working at the dig site, it began to rain. Then the ground rumbled. They felt another tremor and looked around in confusion. At first, they thought maybe it was an earthquake, but the United States Geological Survey said that no such event had been recorded. That was when they realized that they might be responsible for waking something up by disturbing the mound. Was the angry spirit now trying to escape? Maybe the earthquakes would stop if they put the statue back. So they rushed to finish piecing it together. At the same time, geologists began searching for answers. They went over historical records and found that minor earthquakes were pretty common in the Mississippi River Valley. Sure enough, the area had been hit by several small tremors since 1894. Scientists were inclined to believe that the earthquakes were all natural, but then things took a strange turn. Researchers discovered that the pattern of the earthquakes matched the open mouth of the clay figure. You see, the earthquakes only occurred when the moon was full, and always seemed to happen 9 nights after a full moon. They also noticed that the epicenters of the quakes lined up perfectly with the mouth of the statue. It was almost like the earth was trying to show them something. Even stranger, the activity stopped when the statue was returned to the mound. It was almost as if the spirit had been appeased. Sure thing. Here you go. Here we go, the next one. Ancient message. Between 1994 and 1997, archaeologists worked at the Cahokia site and uncovered a whole network of Native American mounds, each one hiding secrets about ancient life in North America. One of the most interesting places they explored was a large platform mound called the Rattlesnake. It was here that they found an old house that dated back to the 1200s. Inside the house, researchers uncovered dozens of artifacts, including pottery, jewelry, and metal tools. It was incredible to realize that these items had survived for over 700 years. But there was one object in particular that really caught their eye. It was a copper plate that had been hammered into the shape of a bird. On closer inspection, researchers saw that the bird had a pair of human eyes set into its head. This was definitely no ordinary artifact. Researchers believe that it was either a fetish, a symbol of authority, or a simple charm to ward off evil spirits. However, it's also possible that the copper plate was a message left behind by the mound builders. See, researchers do actually call the people who built the mounds Native Americans because we have evidence that there were other hominids living in North America before the ancestors of modern Native Americans migrated over from Asia. But back to the copper bird. It was discovered during excavations of the Monk's Mound, which was once the tallest human-made structure north of the Aztec Empire. In total, researchers uncovered over 200 copper objects. They say the copper bird was likely crafted in the Midwest and traded to Cahokia through an extensive trade network. But what does it all mean? Some scholars speculate that the people who built the mounds weren't Native Americans at all, but rather an ancient race of hominids known as the skunk apes. These primitive creatures are said to have roamed the swamps of Florida, sporting a skunk-like tail and foul odor. Buried alive? Now that's a terrifying thought. Archaeologists have discovered evidence that the builders of Cahokia were prepared for the worst. They stockpiled massive amounts of food and supplies, apparently expecting something terrible to happen soon. While excavating a large residential mound, researchers came across a cache of items that suggested the inhabitants knew a disaster was coming. The collection consisted of over 1,000 animal bones, including deer, bison, squirrel, and rabbit. There were also hundreds of pounds of dried fruit, nuts, and corn. Not only did this suggest that the residents of Cahokia expected to be trapped inside their homes for an extended period of time, but it also showed that they were well organized. It would have taken months to collect and store all of that food. It was clear that the residents were taking steps to ensure their survival. It's possible that they had witnessed a drought, an earthquake, or perhaps even an attack from a rival tribe. After all, we know that the people of Cahokia were at war with neighboring settlements. It's possible that they decided to stockpile food just in case. But the question remains, why? Did they have a premonition? Were they preparing for a future catastrophe? Or did they simply witness a famine and want to make sure that they were ready? Unfortunately, without written history, we'll never know for sure. Before diving into the next topic, I just want to take a moment to give a huge shout out to some amazing supporters. Thanks so much for watching and supporting the channel. If you are new here, be sure to join the family. We'd love to have you. The Last Chief. When archaeologists discovered the remains of the last chief of Cahokia, they were shocked. He was only 19 years old when he died. But that wasn't the only thing that made his skeleton stand out. Unlike most of the other bodies found at Cahokia, the young man had been buried with extreme reverence. His grave was far larger than anyone else's, and he was surrounded by precious items that had obviously been looted from somewhere else. The teen believed that the boy must have been royalty. But what was he doing being buried in such a lavish way? After examining his skeleton, researchers determined that he hadn't died a natural death. He had been stabbed multiple times in the chest, back, and ribs. The weapons used were sharp, thin, and long, like spears or arrows. He had also been bludgeoned on the head. Someone had smashed his skull with a heavy rock, probably to ensure that he was dead. But that wasn't all. The young chief also had a pair of fractures on his right thigh bone, suggesting that he had been tortured. Somebody had broken his leg and left him to suffer for weeks until he died. It was evident that the boy had been killed in battle. But there was one detail that researchers couldn't explain. He had a small hole drilled into his skull, and it wasn't there to relieve pressure or drain blood. It was a trepanation, a hole that's deliberately made in the skull for spiritual reasons. Archaeologists can't say for sure what the ritual meant, but they think it may have had something to do with ensuring a safe passage into the afterlife. Maybe the boy's soul needed help getting out of his body. Whatever the reason, it was clear that the people of Cahokia had very strong beliefs when it came to the afterlife. Thanks for watching. Which fact about the unmarked grave of Cahokia surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. See you next time. Bye.
If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Your support keeps this channel alive and lets us bring you even more creepy, mysterious content. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.